channel. If you're new here, welcome. So today I'm going to hit you with this big bad boy. Today I thought it'd be fun to transform myself into Chernabog, the demon of Bald Mountain from Fantasia. Fantasia is a classic Disney movie that kind of makes Chernabog one of the OG Disney villains, and honestly he is absolutely terrifying. So when I was kind of taking a little stroll down memory lane on my last trip to Disney World, I was thinking of how fun it would be to try and challenge myself to transform myself into Chernabog. And not only am I challenging myself to transform myself into Chernabog, but I'm also going to be showing you guys how to create his wings as well. This was the first time I ever made wings, and honestly I'm pretty happy with them. They're pretty fun, they're very easy to do. So anyways, with all that being said, if you guys are interested in seeing how I can achieve this Chernabog makeup look and wing tutorial, then just keep watching. Hey Spooks, so to start off I want to show you how you can create Chernabog's wings. I'm going to be taking this black fabric which I got from Walmart. The great thing about it is relatively stretchy, which is really great for stretching it over the bone of the wings. And for that boning, I'm going to be cutting some PVC pipe into 4 40-inch pieces. I'm also going to be cutting some into 2 6-inch pieces and 4 2.5-inch pieces. Along with that, I grabbed 4 PVC 90-degree corner pieces and 4 TPVC pieces as well. I got 2 packages of 5 medium-sized foam dowels that you can get from Joann Fabrics. It's really great. It's over in their cosplay section over by the fabrics. And then I also got some elastic, some Velcro, liquid cement. You're going to need a heat gun. And this part is optional, but I got a variety of spray paints in order to make the gradient for the wings. You can keep them just black, but I personally am just obsessed with adding gradients and shading and color to things just to help bring out some more dimension so it doesn't look so flat. So I definitely got a few colors, but it's because I knew I would be using them in future projects as well. To start off, we're going to be going ahead and creating the skeleton for the wings and just kind of figuring out how we want it to look. So I'm going to be taking 2 of the 40-inch PVC pipes and connecting them using one of our T PVC pipe connectors. You're then going to be doing this to your other set, so you should have 2 two-sided triangles. I don't know how else to describe it, but you know what I mean. I went ahead and took those apart just so it'd be easier for me to heat and bend the PVC pipe. Now, something to keep in mind, I do always recommend using gloves just to make sure that you don't burn yourself, because this is a very, very, very hot tool, being that it is a heating gun. This is what is going to help us bend this PVC pipe. So you're going to want to go ahead and use it on the highest setting, burn it onto the PVC pipe for a while, and I would find that I would burn it on the PVC pipe for a few seconds, probably about 10 to 15, and then I would start to bend it, do it again, start to bend it some more, and on the 3rd time it would bend very easily. Now I did this slowly just to make sure that I could get the gradual bend in the wing. I don't want this to be a full 90-degree angle. I just wanted this to be able to curve inwards, and so that it, instead of being a straight line, it is definitely going to be rounded. Now another trick is I definitely recommend doing this before you spray paint any of your skeleton wings, simply because the heat gun is actually going to melt off the paint if you try to spray paint your skeleton wings first. This is why we heat it first, bend it, and then you can spray paint it. As you can see, the first piece I definitely wanted to curve upwards so that it can kind of start to create that sharp point, and then this one I'm definitely going to be trying to curve it inwards so it doesn't stick out as wide and it kind of starts to curve inwards more, kind of like bat wings. Now I'm going to be showing you how I'm creating the base for it to attach to on my back. I'm taking 2 2.5-inch PVC pipes and connecting them to the T one, and then I'm going to go ahead and make another one of those before going into my other 6-inch pieces, attaching the 90-degree angles to them, and we're going to be creating this square with the T pieces pointing outwards for the wings to connect to. Now I want to make the quick disclaimer that the primary purpose of these wings was for my YouTube video and my YouTube pictures. This isn't the most functional way of creating wings. This was just a very easy way for me to make them that worked for my photos, so that way it wasn't crossed over my chest to where we would have straps in the pictures. Next, I'm going to be taking my contact cement and gluing all of our pieces together. Now, something to keep in mind is I definitely recommend holding it in place for quite some time to make sure that it sticks. The PVC pipes and the contact cement almost start to have a anti-suction kind of quality where it will kind of start to pull itself out if it hasn't fully dried yet. And you definitely want to try and maybe prop this up in a way so that it can kind of make sure that it can dry safely overnight without beginning to remove itself. But once it is dry, it is nice and stuck together. The following day, I'm going to be taking these skeleton wings outside, laying it on top of our black fabric and tracing them out using a silver Sharpie, and I'm going to be finishing that triangular shape for the fabric to connect. Now, I'm actually going to be creating two pieces of these so that they aren't fully connected and that they can still be a little flexible if I need to move the wings at all, and I'm going to be going ahead and beginning to spray paint. So I personally started off with the darker colors first and worked my way into the lighter colors because I didn't want this to be too bright, but I definitely wanted it to have more dimension than being just black. So go ahead and enjoy my process of painting these and making them subtly different, but in a way that I'm very happy with. Next, I'm going to be spray painting the skeleton wings black. Now, this is actually going to be laying on top of the membrane or the fabric of the wings, so you definitely want this to be nice and opaque and an even coat. Now, I was actually running out of black spray paint during this, so I focused it more on the parts that you are going to see, and I didn't really worry too much on the square because that's going to be attached to my back, and the only person who's going to have to see that is me. Once the spray painted fabric is completely dry, I'm going to be going ahead and cutting out those pieces. Once everything is cut out and laid out, I'm going to be going into my liquid cement and slowly I'm going to be going ahead and gluing the fabric onto the back of the skeleton. So I definitely started up at the upper tip of the wings and slowly worked my way down on one side, making sure that it would still be able to be pulled taut on the other side without wrinkling too much. And then once that is completely dry, I'm going to be moving on to the other side and pulling it tight, making sure that everything looks nicely before going ahead and moving on to the other wing. The main point about this is to work slowly and make sure to hold the fabric in place while it is drying until it is hard enough for it to hold on its own. I went ahead and set up the foam dowels in the areas that I want them to be, kind of starting to figure out how long I want them to be, cutting the pieces on the inner part that is going to be a little bit too long, and I'm actually going to end up attaching those to the areas on the longer part that happen to be too short before going ahead and kind of cutting them to size and gluing them down using liquid cement. Now, once again, I was using this for photography and video purposes, so at the very bottom, I wasn't too worried about making it look perfect because I knew it wouldn't be in shot anyway. So that is definitely something to consider if you're doing a full character cosplay in securing some areas that I didn't necessarily need to. Once again, if you guys have any questions on maybe areas that didn't stay as well as others, please feel free to comment and I will let you know. Overall, these were pretty sturdy. However, I don't know how they would do during an entire day at a con. Now, in order to make these straps, I'm going to be creating 4 straps and gluing them onto the inner medium-most section of the PVC pipes and just allowing those to dry. I found having a clothespin pin them together overnight really helped just solidify that security. And you can either have these tied together on your chest, which is what I actually ended up doing, or you can take some Velcro to have them attached to one another. Moving on, we're going to be creating the horns for Chernabog. You're going to be needing some aluminum foil, newspaper, and liquid cement on top of all of your spray paints that you used for your wings. So to start off, I'm going to be taking a squarish piece of aluminum foil and taking a little bit of newspaper, putting that on the uppermost corner of the aluminum foil and starting to tightly wrap that. And as I start wrapping more and you have more open space, you're going to stuff that with newspaper as you go. So you're just going to stuff, tightly roll, stuff, tightly roll, stuff, tightly roll until you get to the very end of the aluminum foil and you're completely wrapped up. And feel free to cut off any excess as needed if maybe this shape is a little bit too big. We're then going to be taking our liquid cement and gluing down all of the edges of the aluminum foil that can maybe start to lift up either in the spray painting process or the application makeup process. We just want to make sure that everything is nice and secure, and then you want to go ahead and just duplicate all of these steps onto your second horn, and we are ready for the spray painting portion. Much like the wings, I'm going to start off by spray painting them black and slowly working my way into the lightest colors. Now, I want these to primarily be pretty much the exact same color as the rest of Chernabog, so I want it to be very similar to the wings and how I'm painting the prosthetic, because everything in Fantasia for Chernabog, he's very much a unified color. He doesn't have too many crazy parts that happen to be stark different colors, except for the big one, which is his eyes. Now, the other step that we need to make is Chernabog's ears. I'm just taking 2 pieces of scrap foam that I have, and I'm going to be cutting them into a leaf-like shape and just gluing those pieces together in a folded motion, so it really just kind of starts to make an ear. It's very quick, very easy. Feel free to cut as necessary afterwards if you feel like they were too big. Mine ended up being a little bit too big, and so I ended up just cutting them once it was already applied to the prosthetic so I could have a better gauge of exactly what needed to go. So next we're going to be creating Chernabog's eyes, which you can actually see out of a little bit. Now, it's not perfect because there's a lot of opacity going on with it, but you will be able to see it more so than if it were a completely covered mask. So the great thing about this is I actually did the exact same thing for my Venom tutorial. I'm going to be taking this clear mask that I got from Spirit Halloween, some yellow spray paint, white mesh fabric, and some Mod Podge. I'm going to be starting off by cutting out an eye shape from the mask that I am happy with. I honestly just kind of eyeball it each time. Haha, pun intended. And once I have a shape that I'm happy with, I'm going to be applying some Mod Podge with a sponge onto the outer portion of it, laying that down onto the mesh fabric, waiting for that to be semi-dry before cutting it out alongside of the eye shape. This just kind of makes it easier so you can get right on the edge. And once I am finished with that, I'm going to be going ahead and doing that to the second one as well, really just trying to make them look as identical as possible. Next, we're going to be making Chernabog's teeth. Now, I've done this numerous times on my channel, but we're going to be taking polymorph plastic and pouring this into a bowl of previously boiling hot water. It does need to be very, very hot. It doesn't always work if you just happen to use hot water or microwave the water. It needs to be very hot, and you'll know it's ready because your previously opaque and white balls will become completely clear, and then you know that you're ready to go ahead and start molding with it. Now, once again, be careful because the water is very hot, so make sure to take it out using another object like a spatula and then begin molding it between your fingers. I just went ahead and made various shapes so I could pick from my favorite ones later on. I ended up making about 8 and then picked the 4 that I was most happy with at the end. Next, we're going to be working on the prosthetic. I'm going to be taking some petroleum jelly and applying this all over the life cast. This is really going to help with the release of the prosthetic whenever we're removing it from the life cast. And to start off, I'm going to be going into my liquid latex and applying a little bit onto the brow bone area. We're going to be taking some cotton balls, completely rolling them out and applying that to the brow bone in the shape. Now, I always recommend, and I will say this until the day I die, look at your reference photos and try to follow them as best as you can. Now, so for this paste mixture that you can see, I'm actually going to be mixing some liquid latex and flour together slowly until it becomes a paste-like consistency, and I'm just going to be building that up. So throughout this entire tutorial, I'm going to be using a mix of both, just whichever I feel is best for that area at that time. They both work relatively well. I do feel like the cotton and latex helps give a lot of structure. However, the flour and latex is really great for creating smooth areas or just for creating a base that is needed. So honestly, I'm just starting to build up the eye area. This is really great to do with cotton and kind of start to really look at the details on Chernabog, where he has his wrinkles, and try to mimic that and manipulate that using your cotton and latex. The great thing is it will not dry for a little while, so you can manipulate it while it's still wet. You can even start to manipulate it a little bit when it's dry as well, but as you can see in that little color change, I stopped right there and let it dry overnight so I could go ahead and get some sleep, and I'm continuing applying it. Now this is in the morning, so this is also sometimes really smart to do, is let pieces dry and then continue to build off of them a little while later, so that way it can have a little bit more structure. So I'm just focusing on his jaw area and his lip at the moment, really starting to build those pieces up, and then I'm going to be working on his nose. And honestly, he doesn't have that much of a crazy nose, to be honest. It's really just small and kind of pointed. It's probably the smallest feature on his face, which is kind of easy to do, so I'm just accenting that a little bit using tiny pieces of cotton and latex. I also decided to bring up his cheeks a little bit. This is also going to help define the edges of his face and also the bags under his eyes or the wrinkles, whatever you want. He's a demon. He's got little fun features going on. And as you can see, I keep going back to that brow bone to try and make it look as pronounced as possible, because I know whenever we stick those eyes in later on, we want this to protrude more than those eyes. Now, once again, I went ahead and let that dry overnight, and I'm going to be going back with some latex paste, building this up around the ear area because we want a nice area to build for the horns to come off of. So as you can see, I want to make sure that the horns will fit in this little cotton ball ring that I made. Once I know that it will fit, I'm going to go ahead and glue that down with my liquid latex, making sure to sculpt it to make sure that it will be wide enough. And once that is completely dried, I'm going to be going in with my liquid cement and gluing those horns onto that prosthetic piece. And once that is done, I can go ahead and glue the ears on right underneath as well. And I'm even going to be applying a little bit of liquid latex around those cotton balls just to make sure that it starts to blend into the horns, not too much to where it looks like it is part of the horns, but definitely just creating that little bridge between the horn and the prosthetic. And then I'm also going to be lightly applying some liquid latex onto the ears as well, just to help give that a little bit more of a similar texture to the rest of the prosthetic. Now we can finally move on to painting the prosthetic. This is all about mixing colors to get the right scheme going on. So I'm actually going to be mixing some Mare on Paradise paint in blue, black, and some of my Graftobian Pro paint in Graveyard Gray until I can kind of get this navy-ish blue kind of color. And I'm just going to be applying that with a large buffing brush all over the prosthetic before quickly setting that with some baby powder and going back in to just my Mare on Paradise paint in blue and black, so that we have a little bit of a darker tone. And I'm going to be applying this focusing primarily on the areas that there will be more of a shadow. So we don't want to apply all over the prosthetic, so that way you still get some of those natural highlights, but definitely starting to build up that dimension. And we're even going to be deepening that some more by taking just Mare on Paradise paint in black and really focusing on contouring this prosthetic. Now, since we contoured it, we also need to highlight it, so I'm going to be taking my Mare on Paradise paint in white, light blue, and my Moon Creations body paint in sky blue, mixing them together and just applying this to the areas that we want to highlight and brighten before going back into our large buffing brush and just kind of making sure to blend this out so it's not too harsh or too stark. Next, I'm going to be taking some of my polyacrylic protective finish and applying it with a cheap brush that I don't mind throwing away after this. I'm going to be applying it all over the prosthetic. The great thing about this is really going to help give it a little bit of a natural shine so it's not too matte. And also during the removal process, it isn't going to really tarnish the full look and make this look dull. So speaking of that, we're actually going to be going into our Johnson's baby powder and beginning to loosen up the prosthetic. Now, the biggest thing I can recommend with this, you guys, is to go slow. You worked so long and hard on this prosthetic. Don't be afraid to take an hour to remove it from the life cast. You just want to work up the edges slowly and then slowly begin peeling the prosthetic off, making sure to apply baby powder underneath as you go, so that way you're sealing both sides. Once that's completed, we're going to be resting the prosthetic back onto the life cast and gluing on the teeth. Once again, I found 4 sizes that I was very happy with, making sure to kind of place them relatively close together, but I'm going to be going ahead and gluing this into the prosthetic so it doesn't move before going into my Skin Illustrator Flesh palette, taking Prime Yellow and some 99% alcohol. I'm going to be lightly tarnishing these teeth a little bit, kind of discoloring them, and then I'm even going to be going into black for my FX palette and applying that closer towards the gum of the teeth. And then once again, you want to apply a little bit of polyacrylic onto those teeth as well, just to give them a natural shine. And last but not least, we're going to add a few more shadows and highlights to this prosthetic. Going into our Morphe and James Charles palette, we're going to be mixing the blues and the whites together and applying these onto the areas that we highlighted from earlier. And then we're even going to be going back into our black eyeshadow and really focusing on deepening up those contoured areas and deepening up those sockets as well, making sure to make everything look a little bit more realistic and pop wherever maybe the baby powder happened to dull it down a little bit. And that is your completed Chernabog prosthetic. And it is finally application time. Did I just pull an all-nighter to prepare for this moment? Maybe, maybe not. The world will never know. Anyways, I'm going to be putting my hair up into this wig cap just because my hair is so long, and I don't really have to worry about creating a realistic bald cap because this is going to be covered by the bulky prosthetic anyway. So as you can see, I'm just taking some petroleum jelly and applying it to any place that could potentially be at risk of mixing with some spirit gum or liquid latex. This is my eyebrows, eyelashes, and the baby hairs must be protected around my face. We're then going to be applying our Bad Gone Evil medium bald cap, and we're going to be trimming up the edges a little bit where it happens to be a little bit too big on our face. And the great thing about this is we don't have to worry about cutting out the ears. So once you kind of look like you're wearing a swimming cap, we're ready to glue that down. I'm going to be taking my spirit gum on a Q-tip and just applying this to the edges and allowing them to glue down. Then I'm going to be going back into my Mare Paradise paint in blue, black, and my Graftobian Pro paint in Graveyard Gray. And once again, this is the exact same color combination that we used to paint the prosthetic, and we're going to be painting all of the areas that could possibly be seen. So that is going to be our chest, the circumference of the bald cap, and then even bringing it down to our shoulders as well. And you even want to apply this right around the mouth because if you remember, that is an open area in the prosthetic that we did not fill in. So that way we can talk and breathe and just make life a lot easier. I'm then going to be going into my Mare Paradise paint in black and applying this right over the mouth to help darken it up before going into my Morphe James Charles palette and really setting that with some black eyeshadow before going back to our chest with the Mare Paradise paint and really contouring all of our bone structure just to really kind of make us look big and muscular and intimidating and everything that I am not naturally. And just like before, we're going to be adding highlights by taking our Mare Paradise paint in white and light blue and mixing that with some of our moon creations in sky blue and applying that to the collarbones, the shoulders, and the highlights of the neck and just blending that out with our large buffing brush. I'm going to quickly set my entire body using my Johnson's baby powder and a large fluffy brush before going into a very helpful piece for looks like this, and that is temporary spray body paint. This is fantastic for looks like this when you really don't want to have to focus on painting your bald cap. I love it for this. I used it for Venom, and it is my holy grail in a giant prosthetic look like this. Next, we're finally ready to glue on the prosthetic. I'm going to be taking some of my Ben Nye Spirit Gum and applying it to the back of the prosthetic and also a little bit on my face. And once it is tacky and ready, you're just going to go ahead and rest that on your face, making sure to wait until it is completely dry before you start moving because this is a very heavy prosthetic and might want to try and slide down your face. And so the very last thing that I had to do, you might have to do a few more shading or whatever you feel. The last thing is sticking the eyepieces in just because, yes, you can still see out of them, but it does handicap your eyesight a little bit, and so I'm just going to go ahead and stick those in. I did make a few adjustments to the size just to try and make them look as realistic as possible. And that is the completed Chernabog Demon of Bald Mountain makeup look. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment down below what video you'd like to see next. Don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more of my Halloween videos. Please tell me what about this video was your favorite. Was it the wings, the makeup, or my charming personality? I'd love to hear from you guys. So anyways, with all that being said, I will see you in the next one. Bye!